Hello, I'm Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and the series is called I Want to Be a Better Coach. And I want to share a little bit more about my background. I trained as a marriage and family therapist way back in the 80s. Yikes. And in that time, the foundations of marriage and family therapy didn't have to do with um, the DSM, and it didn't have to do with mental disorders. It had to do with families and how our systems work, how we work with each other, the dynamics between people and relationships. It was really fascinating. And it had nothing, like I'm repeating myself, it had nothing to do with someone being sick or crazy or mentally ill. It had to do with the functioning of the relationships between each individual. And I studied that, and I worked in recovery for 8 years in Nova Scotia. And in that arena, I learned a lot about that spirituality is an aspect of our being, in our system of being, that is very influential, but we mostly ignore. And I hadn't studied any element of that, of spirituality, in my training as a therapist. And it was like, I need to know more about that. So over time, I went out to the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, which is now Sophia University, and I got my PhD in transpersonal psychology and focused on spiritual guidance. And spiritual guidance, I learned more of that sense of, we are already, as spiritual beings, we are already whole. We're already healthy. There's no need of healing per se. And shifting my paradigm from one of, even in my training as a therapist, there was that need that people have problems and that we're here to help and support them in fixing, if you will, their problems. And this dynamic, this experience of seeing people as whole and healthy to the next level, really influenced how I be with individuals. And then when I found coaching, it took me to the next level of really integrating that into my work as a coach, as someone who supports and empowers individuals to support and empower themselves. And it was difficult to really integrate that because number one, that need to prove myself as necessary and needed. In a sense, people have a problem. I want to solve the problem, or I want to help them solve the problem. And then I look good and I prove that I'm good at what I do. And if I can help my clients improve their situation, then again, I've proved my worth. They've improved. They come back for more. That dynamic is part of our consensus reality. It's part of how we think of our work in the world as health professionals, or mental health professionals, or people who are really want personal development. We think we need to prove or improve. I was listening to Paul Selig the other day, and they were saying, look, we have no need for you to prove or improve. And even though I had studied and trained that we're already whole, that question took me into this thought of, well, if I'm not improving my clients or proving my worth, what am I going to talk about? What are we going to coach to? How do I do that? And it was really important because of my work in transformational coaching and my um, uh, my principle. One of the principles I work by is, in order to have transformation, you've got to create a paradigm shift, which means you have to see your client already whole. I have to see my client already whole. I have to see that they are their full potentiality. They are 100% already abundant. They already have what they want and need. And that you or I, as coaches, we are already amazing coaches. And it's like, well, how do you do that? And it's really it was a big question for me. It's like, what am I going to talk about, and how do I? And so I had to kind of back up a little bit and see, well, a lot of this I'm already doing, in a sense, like when you can see someone as whole and lovable and abundant and prosperous already in their being, and that they have the full capacity and capabilities to create that for themselves, our job becomes much more of a listening for where they get in their own way, and a listening for where they're already whole and healthy, where they're already activating and acting in alignment with what they know to be true. So quite often people will say, well, I want to be this kind of person, and I don't know how. And I'll say, well, where are you already this kind of person? And they might say, hey, I'm this kind of person when I'm at work. I'm this kind of person when I'm on the ski slopes, or I'm this kind of person when I'm playing basketball with my friends, or I'm this kind of person when I'm quietly knitting. They can tell you when they're already being the person they want to be all the time, and or in other contexts in their life. So they already know when they are in that state that they're wanting. So you may have heard me say this before, but my job is to let you know that you know. So I say this to my clients because I know my clients know. I know they have that sense of wholeness. I know they know when they're acting in alignment with their truth and when they're not. They know when they're not in integrity. And so I just have to hold that space that they know and let them know I know they know. And that way we waste a lot less time together because we're going directly to, hey, I see you. And I know these places. And fortunately, I've been on the planet long enough that I've experienced a lot of what other people are experiencing, that level of resistance, the fear, the trauma, all kinds of stuff that gets in the way of our fullness and the expression of our essential nature. So when people are telling me things, I probably have experienced it to some degree or another through the process of being me. So I don't have any judgments. I don't have any stuff. So they can be in their knowing. I had a client today who's growing her practice to be a lawyer, and she's brilliant. And not only is she brilliant in a sense of being a great lawyer, but she has a knowing, and she's very clear about what she knows. And she's very clear about, this is what I know, but I live in an environment where I'm not allowed to have what I know is me. In a sense, I can support other people in being themselves, but I don't know how to support and be okay with me being me. And this is the foundation, I think, of every client I have. That conversation. I don't know how to be me or do me in context of how to be me. In a sense, her perspective is, if I do what I want, then I'm selfish, as opposed to, if I do what I want, I'm in the fullness of the expression of my essential nature. She knows the difference. She in the conversation, she was describing the difference, but to really fully embody that and allow herself to express the knowing and her truth, that's very difficult. And it's very difficult for most of us because the imprinting and the entrainment of, be what we want you to be, don't do what you want to do because then you're selfish. That imprint is very, very strong. And the sense of, I'm unworthy of my own expression, but you're not. I'll support you in having your expression, but somehow I'm unworthy of that. That's an imprinting from our childhood most often. So as a coach, I'm listening for, first of all, that I know that I'm listening for that place where my clients know the truth about themselves. They know what they love, what they want, their passions, what they don't like, what they're uncomfortable with. They know. And so when I can be in that knowing with them and ask the questions that engage that knowing, the conversation deepens into something much more real and fulfilling, and again moves us along much more quickly. One of the questions that comes up in this is, if my clients are whole already and they're perfect, like, what am I supposed to do? And my friend Amber, I was visiting them in Arizona, and she has these beautiful orchids that she brought back. They were apparently very close to death, and she brought them back. And a couple of times in the morning I would come down and she's talking to her orchids, and they're just flourishing. They're so beautiful. And so we were having this conversation about that, our clients don't need to be improved. We don't need to improve our clients. And she goes, well, how does, what do you coach to? If we're already perfect, what do we coach to? And how do we do that? And I shared with her what I noticed when she's with her orchids. And I said, do your orchids need improving? And she goes, no, they're beautiful. They're in perfection. And I go, so how do you be with them? And she says, I'm just this presence, and I'm listening to them, and I'm talking to them, and I'm just engaged with them. And I said, exactly, because you're already seeing them in their fulfillment, in the fullness, in the unfolding. Now, our clients are always unfolding. You are unfolding into you in this moment. And you may not know what that is, and it might be uncomfortable to not know what that is. But if we take it slow enough, you can experience yourself and be confident and trust this expression of you just as it is. So it's for me, I've been coaching now in this way, taking what I learned as a therapist and a spiritual guide and integrating it into the work that I do as a transformational coach. It's I find it far more delightful to be in the presence of people that I know that they know. And I can count on that, as opposed to the conversations that's like, I don't know how to coach. I don't know how to build a business. I don't know how to. And all this, I don't know how to, gets in the way of the fulfillment of you as a coach or as a human being. So it's big to get beyond the conversations of, I need to improve. I need to prove myself as a coach. I need to get my clients to their results. And I was talking to another client today who's a coach. A lot of my clients are coaches. And she's like, I've been at this for 8 years. She said, I spent a lot of money on my training, and I'm still not, in a sense, I still don't have the results I'm supposed to have. And it's back into that paradigm of not enough, lack, uh, investments and results, that kind of thing. And she's going down a rabbit hole that isn't fulfilling for her. And at this and put a period at the end, and at the same time, the work that she's doing with me, engaged as she's getting to supervision with me, we do a group coaching with some other coaches where we're talking about coaching and personal coaching, all of that. She's really enjoying that, and she's fascinated by how she's becoming and who she's becoming through coaching and through this up leveling, elevating her capacity to listen and hear her clients differently. So, and then she goes, yes, but I spent all this money and I don't have the results yet. And so it's this paradigm shift between, I spent the money and I don't, the object and the results, versus her experience of who she is now, because she went through the training, because she coached, because she's coaching, because she's working with me, because she's going through the group coaching. She's so elevated in her personal life and in her coaching. She doesn't have the money, which would prove her success, but it's like, is that really, yes, money is important. Yes, it's part of the equation, but is that the identifier? Is that really what she's identified with? And she's learning to say, well, there's the money element, and I'm more, the result is I'm more in love with what I do. I'm more engaged as a coach. I'm more fascinated by what shows up in the process. And it becomes a question of what's really important here. And she's learning that this process of fulfillment of her whole being, which she's experiencing, is far more wonderful than what am I making enough money, is the results of my training expenses and investment worth it. So we're always asking these questions, of course, and being able to look at it from the paradigm of wholeness We're growing into the we're enfoldment. We're in full unfolding into this little by little, day by day, moment by moment. And it's challenging and it can be really uncomfortable, but we're listening from a different place. And that's what I think is important about these conversations, even though it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You will at some point, if you don't know what I'm talking about now, you will know what I'm talking about if you keep engaging with your own expression, your own unfolding, not from a place of needing to improve, but from a curiosity and just the natural expansion of you, because that's what's happening. And the more that you become aware of that and allow it, see where you might be resisting, then you get to be more present to that. And then what happens is you become more present to that in your clients. So I think that's all I have to say. One more thing I'll just be clear about with my last point is that sometimes there's when you are coaching from this perspective of just being present and being present to the knowing of the client and supporting them in empowering them to know what they know, then sometimes there's not a lot to say. And a lot of times people say, well, I don't know how to talk that way. I don't know what to say in those moments. And if you just allow yourself to be in the conversation, just allow yourself to be present to what is. This is all experimental for you, as it is for me, is all just experiencing what it is and see what shows up. You're going to find that it's much more effortless than the struggle of trying to prove and improve. You're in a much more natural, engaged, authentic, transparent presence that makes such a difference in people's lives, yours and your clients. All right, I think that's pretty much it for today. If you're interested in coaching with me, there's contact information below. Do have a coaching group, and if you're interested in that, we meet every other week and talk about what shows up in your coaching sessions and how you want to be a better coach, basically. So check those out. And if you have a comment or a question that you'd like me to talk about, if you have challenges in your coaching practice, there's a form below, and just click on that and send me that information, and I'd be happy to answer it. And also leave a comment below if you have, because that really helps other people see what kind of issues other coaches are dealing with. And of course, if you like this and find value, please give me a thumbs up and share it with other people. All right. Big hugs. Bye for now.